The second Bahrain test wrapped up on the 20th of February 2026, giving every team their last structured opportunity to gather data before the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. These are all 11 teams ranked based on fastest lap times, total laps completed, reliability, and visible upgrades introduced. Aston Martin delivered the worst pre-season any team has produced in recent memory, and the numbers back that up completely. 128 laps across 3 days placed them dead last, and the team directly above them on this list completed more than double that total. But the raw lap count is almost beside the point, because the distribution of those laps tells the real story. Lance Stroll drove 6 laps on the final day of the entire pre-season, then Aston Martin stopped running with over 2 hours of track time still available and called it done. The Honda power unit was the source of the pain, specifically a series of battery failures that left the car unable to run for any sustained stretch, and Honda confirmed this publicly on the morning of the final day with a statement admitting the issue and warning that running would be very limited. Fernando Alonso had already hit the wall on day 2, stopping past turn 4 and losing the final 3 hours of that session, with his best time sitting over 4.5 seconds below the session benchmark. Team representative Pedro de la Rosa acknowledged they are not where we want to be, which rates as one of the more restrained understatements of the pre-season. What makes this genuinely alarming rather than just disappointing is that the AMR26 does not run again until Melbourne. No further testing, no quiet garage sessions, no opportunity to diagnose and fix power unit failures away from race weekend scrutiny. Aston Martin carries unresolved Honda battery problems and almost no usable data into the first race of the year, and the comparison circulating in the paddock is McLaren's disastrous Honda-powered campaign from 2017. 10th place for Cadillac reads differently depending on where you set your expectations, and for a team that only received its formal FIA approval to join Formula One approximately 1 year before this season began, the context matters enormously. 266 laps across 3 days put them second from the bottom in total mileage, and Valtteri Bottas's best time on the final day came in at 1 minute 35.29 seconds, which sits 3.3 seconds off the pace. On paper, that number looks bad, but Cadillac would not have been anywhere near the 107% cutoff based on 2025 Bahrain qualifying, which means they are within the functional competitive window for a debut team, not stranded somewhere off in the distance. The concern worth flagging is that Week 1 produced 320 laps, and this final test brought that down to 266, a step backwards in both mileage and reliability that the team boss, Bobby Loudon, addressed carefully while still saying he was extremely happy with how things had gone. Drivers Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez, both experienced Formula One veterans, are powering the car with a Ferrari engine, which at least gives the program a proven foundation. And then there is the Aston Martin factor. Based purely on where both teams currently stand, Cadillac, in their first ever Formula One season, could realistically beat an established constructor at the opening race in Melbourne. That outcome would say far more about Aston Martin's collapse than about Cadillac's speed, but the possibility existing at all captures just how strange this pre-season has been. Williams completed laps, plenty of them, but the pace simply did not show up alongside the mileage, and that gap between effort and output is why they land in 9th. 368 laps across 3 days put them 5th out of 11 in total mileage, which is a reasonable number and one that partly reflects their decision to skip the Barcelona shakedown and use Week 1 of Bahrain testing to play catch-up. The kilometres are there. But when Williams pushed for performance runs, the race noted they were operating on softer tyre compounds than the cars around them, a setup that should naturally produce faster times, and the lap times still did not reflect that advantage. On harder rubber, those gaps would have looked worse. Long-run pace told a similar story, with analyst Val Kororunji from the race describing the FW48's race simulation data as simply uninspiring, which is about as damning a phrase as you can apply to a car heading into a season with genuine expectations attached to it. Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz are both capable of developing a car across a season, and Williams carries real potential into 2026. But that potential is currently buried under a car that has not shown the performance to match its mileage. 407 laps across 3 days placed Racing Bulls second in total mileage, a number that looks strong on the surface but only makes sense when you understand what the team was actually trying to do. This was not a test built around lap time performance. The entire program was designed around Arvid Lindblad, Formula One's only true rookie on the 2026 grid, and the goal was straightforward: give him as many laps as possible before the season began. On the final day, Lindblad drove the entire session alone and completed 165 laps, approaching 3 full Bahrain Grand Prix distances in a single 9-hour window, which reflects both the ambition of the program and the reliability of the car on that day. His best time of 1:34.149 placed him well off the frontrunners, but chasing lap times was never the brief. Liam Lawson handled days 1 and 2, and by the time Lindblad took over for the final day, the cumulative mileage total was already building into something genuinely useful. Racing Bulls leaves Bahrain having delivered exactly what they set out to deliver. A rookie with a bank of experience that simply cannot be replicated any other way. Alpine's position comes with an asterisk worth examining before accepting the 7th place ranking at face value. Pierre Gasly posted their best time on the final day, a 1:33.421, but that lap came on the C5 compound, the softest tyre available, while most of the drivers ranked above him in that session were running on C3. The compound difference alone can account for a meaningful chunk of the gap, and the timing of Gasly's run, which came late in the session and pushed him directly above Haas's Ollie Behrman in the charts, had the feel of a deliberate move rather than a natural outcome of the program. 359 laps over 3 days gives Alpine a solid mileage total, and Gasly's personal count of 118 laps on the final day was among the highest single driver figures of the entire day, pointing to genuine reliability from the package. Alpine looks like a contender for best of the midfield, and the pace might genuinely be there, but the compound offset means the honest ranking puts them just behind Haas until the racing settles the question properly. Red Bull's 6th place ranking reflects something that is almost impossible to measure accurately from the outside: a team that chose not to show what it has. Max Verstappen was 3rd fastest on the final day with a 1:33.109, but multiple analysts noted his sector times pointed to a car that was not being asked for maximum performance. 329 laps across 3 days put Red Bull 8th out of 11 in total mileage, a conservative total for a team with their resources, and a number that suggests a deliberate program rather than any kind of reliability struggle. The biggest story around Red Bull in 2026 is the Red Bull Powertrains engine, their own in-house power unit running in a Formula One car for the first time. That is a genuinely enormous undertaking, and choosing not to broadcast lap time performance during pre-season testing when you are simultaneously trying to understand a new power unit from the inside is entirely rational. Whether Red Bull is sitting on something quick or still working through power unit unknowns, Melbourne will answer the question. Going quiet in testing is, as the race put it, a very Red Bull thing to do. Formerly known as Sauber, and now entering the grid as a full Audi factory team, 5th place here reflects something the lap times do not immediately reveal: a car with stronger race pace than its qualifying simulations suggest. Gabriel Bortoleto set the team's best time of 1:33.755 on the final day, with experienced partner Nico Hülkenberg alongside him across the test. 357 laps over 3 days gave Audi a reasonable mileage total, though day 1 ran short when a hydraulics problem kept Bortoleto to just 29 laps before a lengthy precautionary garage check, with the final 40 minutes of that session producing his only running of the day. The recovery from that point was strong, and what pushed Audi into 5th was the race's long-run analysis piece published after the final day. Their headline framed Piastri as winning the simulated race, but described Audi as a surprise, framing that points to a car doing more in race-pace conditions than its single lap times would lead you to expect. A team carrying that kind of potential into the first season of a major regulation change is one worth watching closely from race 1. Haas in 4th is the kind of result that does not happen often in Formula One, and the numbers behind it are worth sitting with for a moment. 404 laps across 3 days put Haas 3rd in total mileage, and their combined distance across all 3 phases of pre-season testing, Barcelona plus both Bahrain rounds, came to 6,095 kilometres. Ferrari, a team with vastly greater resources and decades more infrastructure, finished that same calculation at 6,090 kilometres. Haas out-mileaged Ferrari across the entire pre-season, and that almost never happens. Ollie Bearman was sixth fastest on the final day with a 1:33.487, which placed him right in the heart of the midfield conversation alongside Alpine, and the race called Haas's position seriously impressive, while describing them as probably F1's least well-resourced team on the grid. Bearman and Esteban Ocon looked settled in the car. The reliability held up across 3 days of hard running, and the pace appears to be genuine rather than fuel load dependent. For a team operating on the tighter end of Formula One budgets, arriving in Melbourne as a potential midfield leader is a genuinely unexpected outcome. 2 stories ran through Mercedes pre-season simultaneously, one on track and one entirely off it, and the gap between them is wide enough to make their final position complicated. On track, Mercedes led the entire field in total laps, completing 432 across 3 days, and their best time for the test came from Kimi Antonelli on day 2, a 1:32.803, that ranked second fastest across the entire 3-day period. Toto Wolff described the car as feeling decent and admitted to feeling relief at that, which, for a team of Mercedes standards in pre-season testing, represents something close to an enthusiastic endorsement. Antonelli himself is 19 years old and driving his second Formula One season, having stepped into the seat Lewis Hamilton vacated when Hamilton moved to Ferrari, and topping the overall timesheet on day 2 in just his second ever pre-season test is a number that carries real weight. Off the track though, Mercedes found themselves at the centre of the season's opening controversy, accused by rival teams of exploiting a compression ratio loophole in the new 2026 engine regulations. An FIA vote on the matter was scheduled for the week after testing closed, and the race reported that the proposed compromise, new mid-season testing protocols, is one Mercedes reportedly expects to pass without difficulty, while potentially requiring more development effort from the very rivals who pushed for the vote in the first place. 3 days of excellent running, a fast and reliable car, and an off-track dispute that has not yet resolved. Mercedes arrives in Melbourne as a genuine threat, with one significant question still sitting unanswered. The case for McLaren as title contenders does not rest on a single fast lap. It rests on what happened when both cars were running heavy fuel loads and simulating race distances, and that data is more revealing than anything else from the 3 days. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris ended the test as second and third fastest overall, with times of 1:32.861 and 1:32.871 respectively, posting both of those laps on the final day from a car that still managed to complete 395 laps across the full 3 days, 4th out of 11 in total mileage. The reliability held across both drivers and across all 3 sessions. But the long-run analysis from the race placed Piastri as the outright winner of the simulated race assessment, ahead of every other team on the grid. And race pace is the number that actually determines where championships end up. Zak Brown, McLaren CEO, stood in front of cameras and said the team will be in the Big Four but not at the front, which either represents careful expectation management or a genuine read on where things stand. Either way, McLaren leaves Bahrain with 2 fast drivers, a reliable car, and the strongest long-run data of anyone. Charles Leclerc crossed the line on the final day of the entire pre-season with a 1:31.992 seconds, the fastest lap posted by any driver across all 6 days of official Bahrain testing, sitting 0.8 of a second clear of McLaren's Norris, who was running on harder rubber. But the lap time, fast as it is, was not even the headline from Ferrari's 3 days. On the 19th of February, the second day of this final test, Ferrari pulled back the covers on something genuinely unexpected. A rear wing that physically rotates 180 degrees, flipping entirely upside down on the straights to cut drag, then returning to its normal position under braking for downforce. No other team brought anything remotely comparable. Ferrari officially labelled the device a test item, meaning it might never appear at a race, but its presence on track demonstrated that creative engineering within the new 2026 active aerodynamics rules is very much alive and very much on Ferrari's agenda. Lewis Hamilton's practice starts attracted sustained attention throughout the test, with the race reporting that Ferrari's engine concept appears to give them an off-the-line advantage, which could matter from the very first race given how unpredictable starts are expected to be under the new powerful hybrid systems. 324 laps across 3 days put Ferrari 9th in total mileage, a number that reflects a deliberate program focused on quality and performance data rather than raw distance. Coming out of an underwhelming 2025 season, where Ferrari missed a key engine loophole and began the year behind their rivals, this pre-season lands as a genuine reset. The race put it plainly: Ferrari is somewhere in the front-running mix, and given the ground they needed to recover, that assessment alone carries weight. All 11 teams ranked, and the picture heading into Melbourne is about as wide open as any pre-season has left things in recent years. Ferrari tops the timesheets, McLaren owns the long-run data, Mercedes completed the most laps of anyone and carries an unresolved controversy into the season. Red Bull kept their cards off the table. Haas looks like the story of this regulation cycle's opening chapter, and Aston Martin faces a situation where their first race weekend doubles as their next opportunity to simply understand what is wrong with the car. The Australian Grand Prix runs across the 6th, 7th and 8th of March 2026, and the order that emerges from Melbourne will tell us far more than anything we saw in Bahrain. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications if you want to follow this season as it unfolds, and drop a comment below with the team that surprised you most from this pre-season. See you in Melbourne.